Here's the thing. I like watching cartoons, okay? And like, yeah, you can make fun of me in the comments. Oh, he likes watching cartoons. But here's the thing. There are two types of people who watch these cartoons. Maybe three. One are the weird people who just only watch these cartoons for no reason and they won't explain why. And they're just creepy. There's one person. Or a second person, they watch cartoons because they remind them so much of their childhood. Or a third person, they watch it because they want to make a career out of making cartoons in the future. Who am I? I am the second person. I'm the person who watches cartoons because it reminds me of my childhood. And here's the thing, I watched tons of cartoons. I watched Down Train, I watched Wild Kratts, I watched so much cartoons to the point where it was like, it was so much. It was literally, I would get complaints by my own parents because I would sit on my ass all day probably watching cartoons. I was one of those first iPad kids without having a name of an iPad kid. That's who I literally was. You could call me the TV kid, right? But literally, I was literally the first iPad kid ever in the world. It sounds cringy. It sounds weird. It sounds made up. But even then, like, it literally is true. I really was the first ever iPad kid because even then, I would just sit down on my computer, or not on the TV, on whatever, watching random cartoons. And here I am grown up, and I watch cartoons like when I used to. I even watched Caillou, by the way, terrible cartoon. I don't know why I liked it. Like, I liked it, and then I hated it because he had an annoying, even then I hated that cartoon, but Caillou sucks. But, I watched cartoons because it does remind me of my childhood. For example, Dinosaur Train. For example, I don't know, just a whole bunch of cartoons. I should have remembered Wild Kratts. There we go. Here's another one. Alphabet Lady. I don't know her name, but like, not Alphabet Lady, or like Alphabet Animals. I don't know. Random cartoons that I simply just watched, and it was absolutely fun. And here I was like, you know what? Let's watch some modern cartoons, right? The first modern cartoon I came up was Miraculous Ladybug. It was a terrible cartoon show. I only watch it because, I know people who are interested, and they talk about it to me a lot, so I'm like, you know what? I might watch it so I just don't hurt their feelings. That's who I was. But I'll be fair for YouTube's sake, okay? I actually liked Miraculous Ladybug. There was a moment in my life where I did, but now looking at it, it was just a big waste of time. I hated that show. But one cartoon that reminded me of Arthur for some reason was Big Green City, and honestly, it's my favorite cartoon show, in modern day, right? It really is one of my favorite. The cartoon show reminds me so much of the older episodes of Arthur for some reason, where, there's really amazing, great life lessons, really amazing stories. It was like 10 minutes of random clips of story. It was 10 minutes of fun. That's really all it is. And that's what the Big Green City is. What's it about, right? What's the cartoon about, right? So the cartoon is about one thing, right? Big Green City comes to the city, and they were back from the country. They moved from the country all the way to the city to live with their grandma because they can't afford much. And that's pretty much what the cartoon is. Eventually, they end up building character development, and they move on to a house, and it just takes time, right? Every season is different. But even then, the Big Green City is probably one of my favorite cartoons because it's just a great cartoon nowadays than, we ever seen before. For example, if you see Bluey, right? Bluey has a lot of controversial stuff. Has like, I think a lesbian couple or something like that. And I don't know if they put it in there, but I know people were angry about it and people didn't want it. But this cartoon has none of that. This cartoon has probably the only relationship that people may care about. I know some people who do care about this, but maybe some people care about this, some people don't. But like, one person may have a girlfriend. They also mentioned something about a divorced wife, and even then, it just doesn't really touch on the whole, in my opinion, or as much. It doesn't touch as much in the relationship side or all of that stuff. All it touches on is, how to build, I guess, just family and fun, right? And also facts to live your life. It's just really amazing to watch this because you just don't really see cartoons like that, right? You really don't. I also remember the second episode in the first episode. There's two episodes in one episode because every episode is 10 minutes, right? So they put two episodes in one episode or in one video, and boom, you get, a series. But I remember this one episode very clearly and very well, and it just launches a chicken up to space. And it was one of the most creative things you ever see. Pretty much Cricket Green, meets the main character, meets Remy and the friend of the character for the rest of the series. And they pretty much, try to launch a chicken up in outer space so they can make, a good impression. By the way, spoiler alert, they end up destroying the city practically with chickens. They tried to throw chickens out of space, and then they literally, somehow, some way ruin the entire city, okay? With chickens. Just let me know, chickens. Anywho, but pretty much they end up, destroying the city with chickens, and at the end of the day, launch the chicken to space, and people admire it, even though the city was destroyed. But anyways, it's like these types of stuff kind of just makes the show creative, and it makes the show kind of amazing. And another thing is, a lot of the characters also have really big, a little bit deeper kind of character development, which we don't see cartoons nowadays do, actually, at all. I've never really seen a cartoon show that has that. Like, for example, Bill Green. Bill Green is a hard worker, and he just likes working and farming and working. Pretty much towards the end, he kind of learns, I guess moderation, if you call it. I mean, he's still a workaholic, but, you just don't, even in season 4 or 5, you don't really see him as a workaholic. You just, he's more developed. All characters end up being a little bit more developed later on. I mean, not all. Actually, I regret that. Some characters. Or also, for example, one of my favorite character is probably Tilly Green. Tilly Green, she's a person who loves animals, and towards the end of season 4 or something like that, I don't really see her much with animals, but even then, her character just stays the same, and she just stays one of the more wise person, I guess. When she's mentioned every single time in the show, letting you know, she's always telling pieces of wisdom. That's literally what it is. Even then, I mean, Bill Green's does that. Everybody has its own way, and everybody has its own, I guess, character development. And when I say they have a little bit of deep character development, I'm not talking about, the show 100, where they had insane deep developments. No, it's a cartoon show, right? What I'm saying is characters change season by season. Gloria, one of the biggest change out there, in my opinion, was in the beginning. She was a rat-nosed, annoying teenager with a job trying to settle her life, right? Yet she was annoying. At the same time, it was a little bit understanding because, she was trying to manage her life. Long story short, she moves into the Greens family because somebody destroys, spoiler alert, I can't speak. Somebody destroys the restaurant, and then at the end of the day, towards the end of the season, she gets a cafe, she does really well, and she becomes successful, and she even hires a worker. Yeah. So some characters do change over time, but even then, it just doesn't feel like it's repetitive, and it just feels like it's a normal cartoon. My opinion, I personally love the cartoon, and I just love the way about the cartoon and how it goes, because here's the thing. Nowadays, cartoons isn't what it is. And let's be here. Let's be clear. Let's be here on Earth right now for a second, okay? Let's be in this time zone. Let's now go back in time. Let's just be here. Cartoons is not what it is. It's not what it used to be. And a lot of times they sneak in a little bit political stuff, a little bit, a lot of stuff like this. And cartoons is like that. But here's the thing. Oh yeah, just letting you know, I am opening the box 1 second. But here's the thing. The Big Greens, it just doesn't really have that political stuff. At least the first 4. I mean, at least the stuff I didn't notice. It doesn't have that political stuff. It doesn't have, the whole people don't like, it literally feels like it's a modern cartoon, and it feels like it was a cartoon that was made 2006 style. Wildlife or Wild Crash or whatever. So I'm gonna be honest here. The cartoon really does feel like it's made back then, and it feels like it's just made in a proper way. And I think it should get a lot more attention than Bluey, because even then, this cartoon just feels, you know, like a natural cartoon that kids should be watching. So, like, in my opinion, because I haven't seen any flaws on it or anything like that, in my opinion, I would let my kids watch it. I mean, here's the thing. If you're a parent watching this video, here's the thing. I would actually recommend you to watch it because I may accidentally, like, skip some stuff, you know what I'm saying? Like, if there's, like, some political stuff, I may be wrong, but I just, you know, sometimes I'll do that. I'll accidentally skip. So, let me know if you do see it. I don't know. But personally, I don't really see it. I think it just really does feel like it's just a normal cartoon with, you know, a normal thing. That's pretty much it. Anyways, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you guys later. Peace out.